There is a black cloud hanging over America. We are on a collision course to great hardship. We know we have too much debt. We know we can never pay it back. We know the clock is ticking, but what we don't know is which straw will be the one to break the camel's back and when it will be broken. The greatest danger to our economy is the loss of the dollar advantage. When all confidence in the dollar is lost, when oil is no longer priced in dollars, when the global demand for the dollar disappears, it will set off a collapse of our way of life. Let's explore how this is likely to happen and how it will cause shortages of food and necessities. Since I've already talked about how society will react, I'll explore how the government will react. The Chinese president's visit to Washington revealed a new global power dynamic. The U.S. and China are standing side by side, acting like equals, but the truth is quite different. The last 30 years have been a season of the ant and the grasshopper on the global stage. China has been the ant, and we have been the grasshopper. Not just the U.S., most Western nations have lived beyond their means. The balance of power is shifting from west to east. The reckless fiscal policies of the United States have come under criticism by China. At the same time, the U.S. has criticized China, accusing them of undervaluing their currency in order to strengthen their export market. China wants the yuan to be a global currency and has begun to question the dollar, and for good reason. The U.S. has no real negotiating power today. China holds $1 trillion of U.S. debt. As our economy continues its downward spiral, as fewer Americans can afford to buy imported goods, the world will no longer need the United States as a safe investment or as a consumer. We have created our own crisis. We have borrowed until we now borrow in order to pay the interest on money we've already borrowed. We cannot pay our debts, ever. Loss of confidence in the dollar will continue. China has already begun to diversify, slowing its investments in U.S. treasuries while investing in the Eurozone and emerging countries. The Federal Reserve has pumped trillions of dollars into the system, and as the economy languishes, it will continue its practice of quantitative easing, further diminishing confidence in the dollar. An issue that has yet to really explode is that of municipal debt. States, counties, and cities are facing staggering budget deficits. The combined national pension shortfall is estimated at $3 trillion. Congress is discussing whether states should be permitted to file for bankruptcy. Cities like Camden, New Jersey are laying off huge numbers of municipal employees. If the Fed is forced to start buying municipal bonds in addition to Treasury bonds, they'll do so by printing more money. The United States is collapsing from within. The only thread holding the dollar aloft is the demand created by oil pricing. With few exceptions, every nation must convert their currency to U.S. dollars in order to buy oil. The petrodollar system benefits the United States in two ways. It creates artificial demand for the dollar, and it allows us to float more debt by selling treasuries for petrodollars. Since the United States has lost credibility, we need to look at who the big oil players are. The top producing oil nations are Russia and Saudi Arabia. The top holders of oil reserves are Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Canada. The largest oil-consuming regions are the United States, the European Union, and China. Russia and China have already made the decision to conduct bilateral trade in their own currencies, including oil. When China imports oil from Russia, they pay for it with their own currency. While Russia is not a member of OPEC, its status as the largest oil producer carries weight. While China has needed the United States in the past as a means of building up its economy, they have reached a level of success that has eclipsed the United States. We are no longer necessary for China's growth, and it is only a matter of time before China and its allies make a formal case for dropping the dollar as the reserve currency and the currency for oil trade. The euro is not a strong currency, and the European Union has its own problems. The most likely scenario is that oil will be priced out of a basket of currencies so that no single nation benefits exclusively from the oil trade. 10 or 20 years ago, the U.S. would probably have taken military action to prevent this, but we no longer have the resources or the clout to get away with it. When the world drops the petrodollar, demand for the dollar will plummet. Today, over $7 billion changes hands every day to buy oil. That demand will disappear. The result will be devastating. The U.S. will be drowning in useless currency. We will be unable to sell our debts to other nations. The Federal Reserve will scramble to take currency out of circulation, but the system is complex. The tools at their disposal could make the problem worse, and it will take too long. Hyperinflation will take over. The U.S. produces less than half the oil it consumes. Our worthless dollars will not be accepted in exchange for oil or other imports. We will be unable to exchange dollars for other currencies. The U.S. Department of Defense is the largest single consumer of oil in the world. The shortage of oil will result in immediate rationing, with the bulk of available oil and oil products held for use by the military. This will translate into no gas, no heating oil, and jet fuel for the consumer. Increasing domestic production by drilling new wells in places like Alaska would take decades. The nation will come to a halt. To understand how this will impact the distribution of food, we need to understand how our food system operates. The food we eat today travels vast distances from where it originates. In our grocery stores, most of our dairy travels from Wisconsin, California, and New York. Our fruit and vegetables from Florida, California, and Washington. Hawaii and Puerto Rico are the only regions that grow coffee. The state of Hawaii imports 90% of the food it consumes. Our meat comes from the Midwest and the South, fed by corn grown in the West and Midwest. We import 79% of our fish and shellfish. The average carrot travels 1,800 miles, the tomato 1,500 miles, lettuce 1,800 miles, garlic 1,800 miles, and corn 1,400 miles. The majority of food growth, production, and distribution in the United States is controlled by a handful of corporations. This will make it very easy for the government to nationalize food production and distribution, which they will do immediately. As with oil, the military will be given priority, followed by government agencies. They will try to ration food, but the process will be chaotic. It will take months to organize, and when citizens are faced with empty shelves, they will revolt. Martial law will be implemented in an attempt to maintain order, but it will be met with such violent resistance that society will either break down completely or the military will be deployed within our borders. Canada will strengthen security at the border to stop the flow of U.S. citizens fleeing chaos. During World War II, rationing was considered a patriotic duty in support of the war effort. Gas, food, and clothing were rationed. People who stored excess food were accused of hoarding and were prosecuted for exceeding ration limits. It is possible that, despite our efforts to protect ourselves, the government will attempt to confiscate stored food. And as occurred during the Great Depression, when the government and the Federal Reserve demanded that all physical gold and gold stock be returned to the government, they may demand the same from us. Banks will be closed for a bank holiday, which will prevent us from withdrawing our money, which will be worthless anyway. Today's society is not the civil, patriotic society of the 1940s, joined together by a common cause. The aftermath of riots, looting, and general civil unrest may result in a system much like the old Soviet Union, a subsistence-level military state. It will take years for America to recover and generations to return to any level of affluence.